One of the things I've experienced while writing the book for David C. Cook is with nonfiction, you can put the message right out there at the forefront, and the stories and everything else can support what that message is. Where I see, at least for me, I see with the fiction side, I would rather have the characters and the story drive the message.
We'll talk about this and much more today. Welcome to a Writer's Day podcast. Hey everyone, welcome back to Writer's Day podcast. My name is Ruth Douthit and I'm an award-winning best-selling author of books for kids and middle grade readers, YA, fantasy, and also adults and women's contemporary, and now suspense. And I'm starting to work on book 3 in my Desert Shadows suspense series. And I'm looking forward to releasing that one next year. 2026 is right around the corner. We're talking just like next week. Wow, so exciting. So head over to my website at artbyruth.com to find out more about my upcoming projects. And I give away a book every month, so be sure and sign up for my newsletter. And also head over to YouTube to subscribe to my podcast, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen to podcasts. And leave me a review or a comment. Let me know what you think of today's episode. Okay, let's get started. DJ Williams is with me today. That's right, he's back to talk more about his upcoming projects. He's working on a nonfiction book. Wow, I'm super excited to hear about that. So you know the drill. Grab your favorite beverage, a comfortable chair, kick back and relax as we listen to DJ Williams talk about writing, the writing business, and his upcoming projects. Hey everyone, welcome back. I'm super honored to have author DJ Williams with me again. Welcome back, DJ.
Ruth, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Of course, it's always an honor to talk with you. But why don't you catch us up as to what you've been up to since the last time we spoke?
Yeah, over the last year, I've had a pretty full production slate. Battle of Lion Rock, the third book in the Beacon Hill trilogy, came out in January, and I ended up signing a book deal with David C. Cook a few months ago. So I'm writing a nonfiction book right now about creativity, and that deadline's in a couple of weeks is when I'm turning that book in. And then I wrote another novel of a new series, book 1 in a new series, and we've had final edits on that, and then that's my next thing I'm going to work on after the new year. But then we've had a bunch of production stuff. I own a production company in LA, so we've had a bunch of other production stuff throughout the year that's kept us busy.
Wow, that sounds exciting. So you're writing a nonfiction book about creativity. That is incredible. Where did you even begin? I mean, that's such a huge topic.
Yeah, tell me about it. I'm like, was this a good idea? I don't know. But you know what? It's been super fun. I had an idea a couple months ago, and we reached out to Linda Howard over at David C. Cook, and we ended up doing the deal with them within a matter of maybe a couple of weeks. It all happened really fast. The book's called Art of the Margins. And it's part of the theme of the book is how creatives can stay inspired and express their creativity in like the tough seasons, so not always on the mountaintop moments. Mm-hmm. So we've narrowed it down a little bit, so it's not all of creativity, which is nice, but it's been a lot of fun to write. It's definitely different than writing the novels, that's for sure.
Oh, wow, I bet. You still have to kind of tell a story though, right? You have to kind of lead the reader along.
Oh, there's plenty of stories because that's what I know how to do. It's the other pieces of it have been the work to make sure I get it right, but the stories have been super fun. So it's part of my journey as a creative, from growing up in Hong Kong to traveling the world to working in the entertainment business for a long time. And stories of friends of mine, which are pretty fun, that get them to share their story in the book too. So that's been really cool.
Oh, neat. Now, you mentioned a new series. Is that for YA or kids or?
This one is going to be for it's adult fiction, so it's probably going to fall in, I would say, into the action adventure thriller genre, probably.
Ooh, wow.
It's a little different from my Chase Hardiman series, which that one's more espionage thriller genre. This one's more of a cross between a modern day version of Magnum PI if he grew up on the streets of LA, and it spreads, kind of the world spreads from like San Diego up to Cambria, which is up in kind of central California. So that's been really fun. I've been doing a lot of research, going to all these cool little towns and figuring out the plot. But the first book is done, which is awesome.
Oh, nice. How many books will be in this series?
I am, you never know. Obviously, you never know how many they'll go. But we've, with my editor and with writing the first book, I'm trying to write it so that it could go on for a long time.
Hmm.
I would love to write in this world for, multiple books, kind of like Connolly's done with Bosch and with like the Lincoln Lawyer series.
Mm.
That's my hope, but it all depends on how it plays out. Yeah, I mean, we've pitched shows and they've gotten really close. We've shopped the novels around and gotten interest from different studios and companies, and it's all really fun. I've just learned that what I have to do is keep my head down, keep writing the stories, and if a deal like that came together, then that's awesome. If it doesn't, then I'm still writing what I love to write, which is really great.
Mm. Yeah, you always should be writing that next story, right? So you're not even worried about it or thinking about it.
Yeah, and that's a bit of a challenge, for authors these days, where it used to be, you could write, you hand it off to the publisher, then they do everything start to finish.
Mm.
And it's so much more hands-on now.
Yes, it is.
And I'm super excited with the David C. Cook deal because, it came together fast because we were all on the same page. We're all after the same mission and the same message. And so I'm really excited to see how that partnership plays out. And I have the production company, which is kind of a little bit of a nice ace in the hole, so
Hmm.
we can create the trailers, we can create tons of content, which is helpful in this environment.
Oh, that's true. You're right. Authors have to know a little bit about marketing and publicity and those angles, how to use social media to their advantage. And like I do podcasts to grow our platforms, we have to be able to juggle several balls at the same time now.
Yeah, well, I would say, because I've been asked this question by different people, would you indie publish or would you traditionally publish? And I'm kind of like an equal opportunist, so I'm like, I'll do either, whichever
Mm.
is the best for the project,
Hmm.
because for the author, it's the same amount of work. So you're going to write the book, you're going to go through all the editorial, you're going to have to do everything you can through your author platform to market the
Hmm.
book. So, a lot of times people stop if they don't get it picked up by a publishing house. They just stop. They never even consider indie publishing. And, I've done both. And I can tell you from experience, it's the same amount of work for the author, regardless of either side, you know. But obviously, the partnership with the publishers are good, because it can broaden your reach, but it's still, uh, I think the days of just handing the book off and not being involved all the way through, I think those days are kind of in the rear view mirror.
Well, so let's talk about the topic of why do writers matter and what responsibility do we have to influence thought and culture and create community?
You know, I when I wrote my first novel, I didn't tell anyone I was writing, that book, and it took me like a year and a half. And in fact, I don't think I even told my wife that I was writing it until I got the author copies in the mail. So it was like an isolated, I like, you're writing in isolation basically. And what I've learned over the years is, and I've met, other authors and bestsellers who are way more successful than me, but we all love telling stories. It's a fun community to be in because you're constantly bouncing ideas back and forth, and just coming up with all kinds of crazy ideas. And so that community piece is huge. And I guess I didn't plan it this way, but I've kind of landed here where my Chase Hardiman series is general market. The Beacon Hill series was signed to Wander and Tyndale, so that's a Christian publishing company. But that book did very well, or that series did very well at Barnes and Noble, which typically may not pick up that kind of a book, but they saw it as kind of a general market series.
Hmm.
So as far as like reaching the culture, I feel like I tend to go that route where I write for entertainment and for kind of a broader audience, but with underlying themes that obviously are rooted in my faith. Um, so I feel like we have a story to tell to the culture, and especially these days with social media and kind of the attention span that social media has created, we've got to write more compelling stories that grab people's attention and keeps them hooked and gets them hooked on reading, versus even just the audiobooks, but gets them hooked on sitting down, opening up a book and losing yourself in that world for a while.
That is a skill I've learned when I've started to lose because I got so addicted to audiobooks. But I tried to pick up a book the other day and start reading, and I found it really is a skill to stay focused on a book to finish one chapter without putting it down to go do something else. And it's something that we have to work at. But I find
Definitely.
it true. I mean, as a podcaster, I interview so many different kinds of authors. I've spoken to an author who was a CNN reporter turned fiction author of political thrillers, to a Canadian feminist author who uses her books to share that worldview, and then, of course, all the gazillions of Christian
Yeah.
authors in their various genres. And I have found that commonality in all of those different approaches and types of thought is that each author has a message or theme that they want to put into their books. You're right, we want to entertain, that's for sure. We want our readers to turn the page and get to the end of the story. But it seems like whether it's general fiction or Christian, there is that desire to influence thought and to do that with a message,
Yeah.
in our story.
Well, and when you're writing fiction, you get to do that through either the storylines or the characters. So it's a little more, you know, underlying, I would say, than if you're writing nonfiction. Um, One of the things I've experienced while writing the book for David C. Cook is with nonfiction, you can put the message right out there at the forefront, and the stories and everything else can support what that message is. Where I see, at least for me, I see with the fiction side, I would rather have the characters and the story drive the message.
Mm.
And I want to be able, I've always wanted to be able to hand my books to anyone, have them read it, be entertained, and then at the end of it, maybe ask some questions, that takes them a little bit deeper. Uh, and so far, it's working.
You're right. I mean, we as fiction authors, we don't want to just come right out and have the character say, I just am so bent on light and hope, and my faith is so strong and everything. I mean, come on, that's crazy. We want the
Yeah,
reader to figure it out for themselves, and by the time they get to the end of the story, the light bulb goes on and they think, oh, now I get it. Or as they're reading, I've had several authors tell me this, as they're reading, the author's desire is to have the reader see themselves somewhere in the book.
Yeah.
And one author said she really beats up her character a lot, and she says, I just know one of my readers is going to say, yes, I've been through that too. I totally identify with her. So I feel like you're right. We have to be so subtle in our messaging. We have to put our characters through so much adversity and have them be resilient and come through the other side. But yeah, we don't want a big speech at the end where the character says, I've been restored and I am so different now than I
Yeah.
was at the start, you know?
Well, and even, when I think of like Beacon Hill, it's young adult, it's supernatural. It's it for me, it was kind of inspired out of the whole Harry Potter franchise because I love
Mm.
that franchise. I know that could be
Oh, yeah, me too.
controversial in certain Christian circles, but she's one of the best storytellers of
Hmm.
young adult ever. Um, but not everything wraps up at the end. And I think that's just the way life is. We don't always have all the answers at the end of the story. And that was one of my hopes with the characters. We put them through a lot. Some characters make it, some characters don't.
Hmm.
And there's just that piece of it, I think, that keeps readers engaged because it's not predictable. And I think that, for those of us that are walking out our faith in kind of this space of entertainment, that's the challenge is you've got to keep their attention from start to finish. And if you can include some of those themes that really draw them deeper, then that's great. Or even just leaves them asking questions. And that's why you want to keep sharing stories.
Yeah, storytelling is so important. In all the research that you do in historical research, you can see the value of storytelling. I watched a documentary by Ken Burns about country music,
Mm.
and that is all about storytelling. That's how that type of genre of music came to be. Was it was all about storytelling set to
Well,
music.
it's why the songwriters in Nashville are so strong because they're telling a story. They're not just looking for a hook, or looking for something that a beat or whatever that grabs someone's attention. They get down to the story. As I was in the music business for about 10 years, and you could always find the great songs if you strip them down to either piano and guitar and a vocal.
Mm.
And if the song captured your attention with that, then you knew you were onto something, once you went in the studio and added all the other stuff to it. But when you strip it down, and if that grabbed your attention, you knew you had something. And I think writing is kind of the same way. If you strip the story down to the bare bones of what it is, if that catches your attention, and as a writer, if that gets you up in the morning to keep chasing that next chapter, then you're on to something with that story for sure.
Oh, that's true. And that's interesting you brought up that you were in the music business. I was just on Facebook the other day and someone was asking what's the saddest song that ever was released. And I think the majority of the people said George Jones, He Stopped Loving Her Today.
Mm-hmm.
And my husband had never heard that song. We were on a road trip or something, and I have a playlist of nothing but storytelling, story songs. And I played that, and he was just blown away. He said, I have never heard that song. That's the saddest song I've ever heard in my life. And I told him, I used to have my writing students analyze it because it follows the plot structure beautifully
Yeah.
in that it hints, you kind of think you know what he's talking about, and then boy, it just really flattens you. And then for the rest of the story, you're just hooked and wondering how is this going to turn out. It's just amazing. And we listened to One Tin Soldier and Wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald. I had my students analyze A Boy Named Sue. I mean, it was so fun.
And that's the thing of, especially with where technology's heading. When I was in the music business, when iTunes came along, we all had to
Mm,
go find new careers.
yeah.
Um, and I ended up in the TV business for a while. And even with publishing right now, with AI and everything, everyone's wondering, well, how's that going to work? But what you can't replicate, digital, sometimes even digitally, you can't replicate the heart of a story. You can't replicate the heart of a song. Someone who's
Hmm.
writing the song, someone who's writing the book, you can't get that far into their imagination to stay one step ahead of them. And so, I know with AI, it's making it, I don't know, maybe it's making it easier for people to try and write, um, but it's never going to replace that imagination piece of a regular human.
That's true. And even that emotional connection. And I have talked to so many beginning writers who say, "Oh, I use it to edit. I don't hire an editor." And I tell them, "No, you need to get away from that habit because you need the human emotion. You need that human being behind your work to read it and see where it's lacking that emotional development, where there's plot holes, where they can say, hey, this is great, but you need to work on this, you need to work on that, and this. I even had an editor say, hey, go read this person's work and learn from how they do their structure and then come back and revisit your book. AI would never in a million years tell you anything. It always just says, oh, that's great. Do you want me to help you draft another scene? Oh, I love that. Do you want me to help you analyze it? Oh, that's wonderful. It never gives you the emotional feedback that you need, that human beings know.
Yeah.
It won't ever give you that. So you won't ever learn as an author if
Well,
you
and
rely on that.
yeah, well, and reading other authors, I haven't done a lot of reading this last year, I'll admit, because I'm trying to just get everything done.
I'm right there
But,
with you.
but reading other authors, one, I'm a fan of a lot of them. But also, yeah, you start when you're writing novels, you start to read and see ways that they story tell or see how
Hmm.
they develop characters. And but then, you sift that and you take it through your own lens and do
Hmm.
your own spin. That I think will never go away. I think the AI thing is kind of the quick fix, but
Yeah.
it doesn't have the heart behind what we can bring to the table for sure.
Even with book covers, I am on a couple of book cover groups on Facebook and they've been posting a lot of their covers and you can tell the ones that are AI and it's just they're awful. They're
Uh,
flat, they lack emotion, they're just terrible. And everybody tells them that, you need to stay away from AI for your book cover designs. But as you said, it's so easy. You just say, do a image that looks like this,
mhm.
bling, and it does it. But it just lacks the depth and the
Yeah,
layers that you need in a book cover, that emotion with the lighting and everything. And so,
yeah,
yeah, I mean, it's a great tool. I use it as a writing tool, but it's important that we not use it as a crutch because if you stick with a crutch for the rest of your life, that limb won't ever get strong and that limb will become useless because you've relied on the crutch forever.
yeah.
So you can't do
Well,
that.
and Ruth, if you're traditionally published now, like I just saw, this is the first time I'd seen it in a contract, is there is a whole section about AI in there, and you're just not allowed to get near it. And
Wow.
so, that's for up and coming authors to realize, you might indie publish using AI, and that's all great. But if you're wanting to go to kind of the next stage or you're wanting to get with a traditional publishing house, you have to know that before you even start writing the book
Mm.
because you can't get anywhere near it while you're working on the manuscript.
Wow, that's incredible. And that's great because, yeah, too many writers out there are relying on it as a crutch rather than just a brainstorming tool or a
Mm.
research tool, and that's it. So,
Well, and
yeah.
even isn't that the fun part is the writing part? You know what I mean? I'm
Yeah, that's the fun part. Oh
like,
my goodness, I'm plotting out my next book and I used AI to help me brainstorm some conflict, but that's about it. But I'm going through, I use Trello and I plot out each chapter, 3 scenes per chapter, and
mhm.
I'm almost near the end. And I'm excited to start writing this book because I've gone through and I've plotted it out. And you're right, that's the fun part is to get in there and start writing.
Yeah, Ruth, you're way more disciplined than I am. I, I will admit, all of the novels I've done so far, I've never outlined them at all.
Wow, wow.
And writing a series, that got a little tricky, but But the nonfiction one, I outlined that one start to finish because
Okay.
I knew, okay, I have to. Plus, it was a short. I think I'm gonna turn it in. By the time I turn it in, I would have started and finished within like 3 months. So I knew it was a short amount of time. I better have my act together. But the novels, I haven't outlined any of the series, even the new series. I know what happens in the next book, but that's about it. But I've tried to outline, and then I shoot myself in the foot like on day one of going, well, I'm going to change everything. Here we go.
That's great. Well, so you've hinted at what's to come in 2026. Anything else? Do you have book events or tours or anything?
I did last year. Was it last year? I think it was last year. Last year and the year before, I did a tour with Barnes and Noble. I did, I think, 34 dates with them. And we sold out every date, Ruth, except for one. Guess what? Guess what weekend that was?
What?
It was Easter weekend. I said I can't compete with Easter. It was not gonna happen. But we did really well. Just with my schedule this year, I decided not to do any dates, just so I could get the production stuff and the writing stuff all out of the way. But we are looking at some things next year that might put me back on the road. So we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Okay. Can your fans go to your website to learn more about your schedule or?
Yeah, absolutely. So the site's djwilliamsbooks.com, and they can also follow me on Instagram, DJ Williams Books. I'm on Instagram probably more than anywhere else.
Okay, yeah, me too. Wonderful. Well, I know you're super busy, so I'm honored that you took time out to chat with us today and so that we can learn more about what's coming. So thank you so much, DJ. I appreciate it.
Ruth, thanks for having me on. I appreciate that too.
Oh, wasn't that great to listen to DJ Williams, one of the most prolific authors I know, talk about the writing business, what he's up to, and giving us some advice on AI use and how to make sure that our authentic voice comes through in our stories. That's the important thing. So I hope that you've been encouraged by his story, by DJ's story, and his upcoming projects. Wow, he's got some great projects. So head over to djwilliamsbooks.com so you can find out more about what's coming and you can stay in touch with him. He says he's mostly on Instagram, so head over there to find out more about his projects. But most importantly, keep going on your writing journey, one step at a time. And thanks for listening. Until next time, God bless.